Hello folks, Sam here, Reloved Guitars, and outside on a beautiful bank holiday in the UK, which is national holiday where all the banks don't open, but some of the shops do, and everyone gets a day off work, mostly, and it means we do things in the garden and make barbecues and stuff like that if the weather's nice, and for once it's nice, which is really rare on a UK bank holiday, British bank holiday. Anyway, the reason I'm making this quick video is to introduce you, I suppose, to the guitar that taught me a lot of what I use now to set up guitars. It's a beautiful sounding little baby Taylor. I've got a plaster on my finger where I chopped it, making a miniature guitar, so I can't quite get the thing to play perfectly well, but it has some lovely sustain. And it plays open chords beautifully, melodiously. And it's got lovely low action, and it sustains forever and ever. I didn't really tune it anyway before I sat down, but anyway, the point about this guitar is that I think about 4 or 5 years ago now, time whiz by, but anyway, a few years ago I was working away and I got a bonus from work and decided to go and treat myself to a new guitar up in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And I went into the guitar shop up there, and because it was in the middle of a heavy snowfall and no traffic could get anywhere, so I was the only person in the shop that day, and had the shop to myself, so I got to choose through quite a lot of guitars, and sat in the middle of the shop and had the guys bring me small guitar after small guitar, and I didn't really know what the term for these guitars were, but I knew I wanted a travel guitar because I was doing a bit of travelling, and so the guys brought me a few things, and I tried the Martin Fudge Packer, as Scott Grove calls it. It's called the Martin Backpacker, but he calls it the Fudge Packer because, and I agree with him, it's the worst guitar ever made. Beautiful looking odd thing, but utterly unplayable and with a dreadful sound. So I tried that one. I tried a couple of other small body guitars, but I settled on this one, which is the Taylor Baby, and I think it costs about 300 quid then. It's made out of mahogany, and it's a beautiful mini dreadnought thing. It's starting to wear a little bit on the back where it touches my shirt on sunny barbecue days, or my bare torso, sweaty torso on sunny garden days. But anyway, I settled on this, and I liked the way it sounded in the shop, and then took it away and back to the hotel I was staying in, and started to play the guitar. And anyway, after a little while, didn't play it that much on that particular trip. And then in the months that followed, I started to notice that it never played as well as it did in the shop, or as well as I thought it did, and I started to get really disappointed with it. And the feeling I had was that I couldn't get it in tune, no matter what I did. I'd tune up all the strings with a tuner, and as soon as I played an open chord, like a D, it would be slightly out of tune, enough to spoil it. And I think if you've got half a musical ear, you can hear the tiniest differences or tiniest imperfections with tuning. And open chords, which should sound the best of all, can quickly sound terrible if you've got notes out of tuning there. And I found that with this guitar, and I kept playing it and picking it up, putting it down, and I never was happy with the tuning, and I couldn't work out why. and I started to do research, and just basically I like the construction of it, I love the look of it, I love the sound of it. It used to hang on the wall in the living room, and every time Claire would speak, it would, the pitch of her voice would make it resonate on its own. But I couldn't really live with it because of the tuning thing, and I certainly wouldn't have used it if I was in a band at the time, because it just didn't play those chords, those open chords, well enough. It played bar chords up here quite well. Anyway, and so I started researching, and months and months of casual research followed, where I was looking online in forums. I went to Taylor's website, and couldn't find anything that would really. First of all, it's difficult to search for. Taylor won't stay in tune. If you don't know what's wrong with it, how do you know what to search for? So I'd be saying tuning instability, baby Taylor, tuning problems, and you get all manner of stuff. But nobody gave me. There were no single reliable, credible answers to this, and certainly nothing on Taylor's website. And I got an enormous range of answers from. Because it's a short scale guitar, then you have to tune the strings up, but get extra thin strings and then tune them 2 tones up or something, and play it in certain different tuning. Or there were people saying get heavy strings and tune it down. There were people saying you know, you've got to put it in a box with a humidifier. Anyway, there's just a huge range of different ideas, but none of them conclusive, and none of them with any real evidence, and none of them that actually went any way towards suggesting a solution to the problem. And so I just marginalised it, shoved it off to one side, hung it on the wall, and didn't play it much. And then I started to play. There was a time, I don't know why, I started to play a couple of songs, and I would put a capo on and play Tom Petty, Free Falling, particularly, for example. And that used to play really nicely with the capo on, and eventually there was a couple of other songs I'd play with capo on the 1st fret, and also that used to play nicely. What I noticed bit by bit was that not only did the guitar play nicely with the capo on, but it was also easier to play, because it had quite a high action anyway, despite it being nicely built and everything. Anyway, to cut down an already long story, it just occurred to me that every time I put the capo on, the guitar became the guitar I wanted it to be. And I just thought, well, logic tells me that the nut has to be the problem, at least one of the problems. So what I did was I put the capo back on, let's say on the 3rd fret, where I knew it sounded really good. Well, first of all, actually, I almost convinced myself to down-tune the guitar, put the capo on the 1st fret, and use that as an open-tuned guitar, and lose the fret, just to have it sounding the way I wanted it, and playing the way I wanted it, which is a bit of a silly solution. So I knew that was a kind of compromise, or was making the best of a bad thing. So I put the capo back on the 3rd fret, and then I started to just look. I didn't have any gauges or anything, but I just looked at the gap. So there's the new 1st fret. So this becomes a 0 fret, and the bridge effectively. No, sorry, the nut effectively. And then I started to look at what's the distance of the strings over this. And they were very, very low. You could see that straight away. And yet, even being so low, the guitar played really well. So there's nothing about the lowness of those strings that stopped it playing. So I'm thinking, okay, whatever that height is, let's have a look. I took the thing off, and then I looked at the height of the string over that 1st fret, which is the one after the nut, and it was way, way bigger than the height of the string over that fret, that 1st fret, when the capo was on, right? So there was, immediately I could see that there's something about the nut, when in my view, that was set the strings too high over the 1st fret. What I started to do is I was checking with the tuner. If you tune the string to an E, now this won't do it because this guitar is now set up correctly, but when I tuned it to an E, I would press the F. I'm doing it really hard, but fretting the F would make the note go substantially sharp of F on the old version of this guy before I set it up. So I was starting to discover that the impact of this height over the first fret of the strings over the first fret was the impact was that in fretting the strings, all of the notes you fretted down around here would all be sharp. These notes here would be sharpest, and then it would decrease. And watching the tuner, I noticed it kind of decreased around about the midpoint here. Well, actually, sorry, by the 12th fret. And I noticed that by the 12th fret, it was back in tune. And the worst, it was increments, worse down here, tiny bit here and none there. So it was a kind of sliding scale all the way up. But down this end, anything you played at this end, the fretted notes would be slightly out of tune of true, which would really totally mess up your open chords. This is not in tune particularly well now. But, so I thought, hang on, this is crap. This is really crap for a £300 guitar. And I started to wonder, is this the same for all guitars? And lo and behold, I started to notice on every guitar that I was just beginning to buy and sell a couple of Stratocasters. And I hadn't really thought about doing Reloved Guitars at that time. I was thinking more about, my plan originally was to buy 2 or 3 of these unloved black Squier Strats, and just to see what it is you would do to them to make them more attractive or more saleable. You know, I was thinking kind of a bit about eBay selling. And I did a couple of them up, and they were really nice. They're quite simple to do up, and I levelled the frets, and that was a really nice start point, because you could then lower the action and get away with a much lower, good sounding action. But there was one particular guitar that even when I levelled the frets, it still, like this guitar, was out. It just wouldn't play. The open chords sounded like absolute shit. So around about the same time, I got these 2 guitars, and in fact I did it on the I think on the Squier first. I put the capo on, did that same thing. It played beautifully. I thought, right, this is it. I'm gonna cut away these nut slots until I get the same height of the first string, of the first fret, with the nut as I do with the capo. And actually, I didn't even have any any feeler gauges. So all I did to make sure I was going to the right height, I just took a card or a plectrum or whatever, and when I had it capoed, I put it under to wherever it was, had enough room to go under without touching it. And then I would count from there and say, right, 8 frets under, 8 frets up, this is the right height. So then I would take the capo off and I'd go 8 frets up, that should be that high, and I could see there was a huge gap and it was way higher. So with some pretty rudimentary tools, I cut those slots down on the electric guitar until they were all complied with that homemade guide. Immediately fixed the problem on that electric guitar, and I was thrilled to be able to package it up, because somebody had bought it by that time, and I fixed it just before I sent it off to them. And then I came straight back to this one. I did the same thing with this, and what I did is I had a new nut standing by in case I messed it up, and I took out the bridge snap here, which was way too high. There was about 4mm action here at the last fret. So I took the bridge out and took about 1.5 mm very slowly. I had another one standing by in case I got it wrong. Got that action the way I liked it. I don't think I leveled the frets on this, actually. Anyway, thinking back. But what I then did is I then cut these down to give me the same action over here as you would get with the capo. In fact, it wasn't quite the same. I was very conservative about it. So the action was sorry, this wind is blowing. I decided not to put the sock on because it makes the camera like that. Anyway, the action on this was originally about 0.9 of a millimetre. The action on the capo of the first fret was actually about 0.1, and that seemed a bit too scary for me, so I went to about 0.3 as a safe guideline, and 0.3 was enough to take this down, so that as soon as I strummed it afterwards, I could hear that I'd fixed the problem that nothing could fix in 2 years previously. So it was like getting a new guitar back, and I was so chuffed, you can imagine, to have this fabulous, beautiful little guitar, which I now love and wouldn't get rid of at all. to have it back and to have it play so true, but even more of a reward to have learned something that was kind of universal for any guitar. And then, having done about 90 or so guitars since that time, I've found, I would say about 3 or 4 in that 90 that I would say the nut was correct, or nearly set correct. The rest are way out, wildly out, just as these were, with all the attendant intonation problems. And that's what it's doing. It's causing intonation problems because of the extreme height of the strings over the first fret. It's not a tuning problem really, it's an intonation problem, and that's why it's difficult to search for it, because when you're a newcomer to playing the guitar, or you're not a tech or whatever, you don't know that it's intonation. You just know you can't get it in tune, and you start even trying to tune it with a chord fingered like that, and because you want that to sound right, and then you play it open and you check it on your tuner and all the notes are wrong. To you, the owner, it just feels like it's out of tune. You can't get it in tune properly, and that's how you describe it when you go searching. Of course, you don't find that much about it. So it's an intonation problem caused by the extreme height, and the distances are so small. 0.3 is ideal, 0.2 is workable, 0.1 is what the capo gives you, 0.9 to 1 millimetre is wildly high and will cause you untold intonation problems. If you're brand new, you've only just ever picked up the guitar, you won't know. If you've been playing a few years, you'll know immediately, but you won't know why, and you'll eventually just get shot of it and buy another one, when all you have to really know is that this is the culprit. Anyway, that's 16 and a half minutes to tell you where it all began for me. This is the guitar, the Baby Taylor, and in a way, much as I love it, there's still a bit in me that's indignant and says, why the hell can Robert Taylor sell this for 300 quid in a respectable, reputable shop, with that by default being so badly out? And it's been badly out on every single guitar I've ever come across, including other Taylors. So how can you do it? How can it not be important when a guitar playing in tune is probably the only thing it has to do well? You know that kind of internet joke, you only have to do one thing, make the guitar play well, and it doesn't for £300. And I've picked up £1,500 Gibsons off the wall, and they suffer from exactly the same problem. The higher end Gibsons apparently now fix that by an adjustable nut, finally, but you've got to pay a lot of money for that. So one of the things I would say is, if you're coming to me and you had 25 quid to spend and that was it, I would say get me to adjust that for you. That will make the difference in two ways. It will make more difference to the feel of the guitar than adjusting the action down here, believe it or not. This is where it feels hardest. People think it's because the action over the last fret is really high. It's the action down here that makes the guitar tiring. So it will fix that, and the second thing it will fix is the intonation problem that you can't ever quite pin down. You just know it doesn't sound right. So there you go, there's my entire story of how Reloved Guitars came to be, and I'm really grateful to Robert Taylor of Taylor Guitars for having done it so badly that I learned a lot. So thank you, Robert, in a roundabout sort of way. Anyway, I'm going to enjoy the rest of our bank holiday, and I will catch up with you later on.